The Roman legions were right at the gates. His empire was in literal ashes, and the Poison King finally raised a lethal vial to his lips to end all. But absolutely nothing happened. Greetings, time travelers. Today, we are peeling back the curtain on one of the most mind-blowing conspiracies of the ancient world. You see, while Rome wrote the history books to label Mithridates a con barbarian, the truth? Well, it's far more sinister and impressive. We begin at the end, a broken king in a lonely tower, holding a dose of toxin that could kill an OX, only to find himself trapped in a body that refuses to die. I mean, how he become the world's first biological super soldier? The secret? It lies in a childhood spent in the shadows of a royal murder. It is 63 BC. And the legendary king of Pontus is a man without a country. For 40 years, he was the only ruler who made Rome tremble. A master tactician who poorly spoke 22 languages, right? Now, the rhythm thud of ruined boots is closing in. Mithridates is no fool. He knows exactly what happens to kings who lose. They are dragged through the Roman Forum in iron colors, mocked by the masses, and strangled in a dark dungeon to the sound of cheering crowds. To avoid this humiliation, he chose a different exit. He drew a mixture of the most potent venoms and plant toxins ever recorded, a brew he had spent a lifetime perfecting, He drank it down, expecting a swift release into the afterlife. But his pulse? It didn't even flutter. His breath stayed strong. He was cursed with the very thing he had spent his entire life building: total immunity. The Romans wanted the world to believe he was just a paranoid tyrant. But the reality is much more chilling. Mithridates was the pioneer of lost science. A man who turned his own biology into a fortress. This obsession wasn't born out of a quest for power, but a desperate need for survival. To understand the king who couldn't be killed, we have to travel back to a time of shadows and silver platters. We have to look at the night his father died at a royal banquet, and the terrifying realization that his own mother was the one holding the vial. Hello, time travelers. Tell me, what if your own blood was actually your deadliest enemy? Picture this: a royal banquet, cold wine, and unlimited power. Then suddenly, King Mithridates just drops down. One sieve, one convulsion, and literally, game over. But see, here's the real kicker. The assassin wasn't some rival king. It was his own wife, the queen. And now, she's coming for her son. I mean, imagine being only 14 years old, knowing your mother is literally brewing your death. Would you just hide? Well, Mithridates didn't just hide. He vanished into the mountains for 7 long years. But here's the thing. He wasn't just surviving, he was evolving. While everyone thought he was nothing but wolf food, he was turning his own stomach into a laboratory. Arsenic for breakfast, hemlock for lunch, belladonna for dinner. He was micro-dosing death. To become a god. He was building the legendary Mithridatism, a universal antidote that made him biologically unkillable. By the time he returned to claim his throne, he wasn't just a king anymore. He was a walking fortress. His DNA rewritten, his blood toxic. He was the Poison King. But wait, there's a secret ritual he performed, involving a bizarre ingredient that medical science still can't explain, even today. And the cost? Well, let's just say his greatest strength became a curse so terrifying, it led to one of the most ironic deaths in all history. Right then, Do you really want to know what he sacrificed for this power? Imagine waking up and drinking a cocktail of arsenic and hemlock just to stay alive. Sounds insane? Well, for Mithridates, it was just another Tuesday. You see, forget the banquets. Because when this king finally reclaimed his throne, he didn't want wine, he wanted blood and chemistry. I mean, he turned his palace into a literal laboratory of the macabre. And why? Because he was obsessed with one thing: becoming unkillable. Every morning, right before the sun hit the horizon, arsenic, strychnine, belladonna. See, he wasn't suicidal. He was training his blood, like a gladiator. But here's the real secret. The part the history books are too scared to tell you. You see, to Perfika's Mithridatism, he needed data. And he didn't get it from books, no. He used the palace dungeons as a human testing ground. Death row prisoners weren't just executed, they were living canvases for his toxic masterpieces. Just imagine the horror. Mithridates watching with a pen in hand, meticulously documenting the exact second a heart stops. Through these atrocities, he birthed the Mithridatism, the universal antidote. We're talking 65 secret ingredients, including charred flesh and wheat for the blood of Pontic ducks. Why ducks? Well, because these birds could eat poison and thrive. He was effectively turning his veins into a fortress. I mean, roaming assassins? They were a joke. To Mithridates, their most lethal poisons were nothing more than a mild spice. He had achieved the impossible. He was a living miracle of science. But here's the terrifying hook. Time travelers. When you spend your life building a shield out of poison, you eventually become the very thing you fear. Mithridates is about to find out that his greatest strength was actually his most terrifying cage. Stay tuned, because how he tried to die will haunt your nightmares. The year was 63 BC. The Roman wolf, led by the relentless General Pompey the Great, had finally cornered the king who had been a real thorn in the Republic's side for nearly half a century. High atop a fortress in Panticapaeum, Mithridates VI of Pontus looked out over the horizon. The empire he'd spent a lifetime expanding was in ashes. His own son had betrayed him. I mean, talk about a knife in the back. The walls were closing in, and the Roman chains were already being forged. For a man who styled himself a god, it was only one exit left that didn't involve the humiliation of a Roman cage. Mithridates reached for a small vial. This was it, the ultimate concoction. A concentrated dose of his most lethal poisons, meant to end a life in seconds. But he wasn't going alone, you know? His daughters, Mithridatissa and Nissa, stood by him, choosing the grave of the horrors of Roman captivity. They drank first, and then moans, they collapsed, their breath stolen by the very toxins their father had mastered. Their ends were swift, quiet, merciful. Then, the Poison King raised the vial to his own lips. He swallowed the remaining liquid dose strong enough to kill a dozen men. He waited for the darkness. He waited for the cold grip of death to finally release him from the weight of his crown. At time travelers, this is where the genius of his life became the horror of his death. His heart continued its steady rhythm. His lungs, you see, conditioned by decades of microdosing, processed the venom as if it were nothing more than water. He had spent his entire life building a biological fortress, training his cells to hide every assassination attempt, every secret plot, every lethal herb. He had succeeded too well. He was so immune to death by poison that he was now a prisoner of his own heartbeat. Can you imagine the sheer terror? surrounded by his dear jailer, with the sounds of Roman boots echoing through the stone halls. He was trapped inside a body that refused to die. He achieved the dream of every monarch immortality against the hidden blade, only to find it was a curse. He was a living miracle of science, and that miracle was now his executioner. In a final, desperate act of irony, the man who had conquered every toxin on earth had to beg for steel. He turned to a Gallic mercenary named Mithridatism, pleading with him to do what no chemical could. He grabbed the man's hand, guiding the sword toward his own chest. The Poison King, the immortal who had turned his blood into a shield, finally fell, not to the secrets of the laboratory, but to the cold, hard edge of a mercenary's blade. His own chemistry had conquered the grave, only to make his final moments a waking nightmare. Himself, Mithridates said one last secret for the Romans, a secret so valuable that Pompey himself would stop at nothing to possess it, and what the runes found inside the king's private chambers. Well, it would change the course of medical history forever. Time travelers, listen. Pompey's soldiers didn't give a damn about gold. They were hunting for something far more valuable, a literal cheat code for immortality. Inside the king's private chambers, they finally found it. Mithridatum, 65 ingredients, opium, rare desert herbs. And I'm telling you, the absolute craziest part? Microdoses of actual poison. See, Mithridates hadn't just studied toxins, he built a literal biological fortress right inside his own veins. But here's the real kicker. The Romans didn't destroy his work. No, they stole it. Just think about this for a second. The Roman emperor, from the psychotic Nero to the stoic Marcus Aurelius, started their day with the same deadly cocktail. Why? Well, because when you're at the top, your next meal is usually a death sentence. This wasn't just medicine, right? It was pure, weaponized paranoia that lasted for centuries. It fueled the dark hearts of the Middle Ages and haunted the very halls of the Renaissance. But is this just some dusty, ancient myth? Look at modern science today. Every time we talk about immunity or vaccines, we are walking right in the shadow of the Poison King himself. He lost his empire, sure, but he won the war for human survival. He proved that true power isn't held in a sword, it's held in the blood that refuses to die. I mean, what else are they hiding in these royal bloodlines? What other forbidden formulas are still in use today? Behind closed doors. You honestly aren't ready for what we found next. Hit that subscribe button and stay in the shadows if you dare.